Hey, Peter. Anyone else here?
Hi, Paul.
Hey, how's it going, Peter? I'm out walking the dog.
Can't hear you if you say something.
Oh, still no? Hold on.
Oh, maybe that's my side. Let me see.
How about now?
No, it should be fine on my side.
Let me check my settings.
My speakers work fine. I
Yeah,
can't
still
hear you.
nothing.
So, but I can hear like some YouTube on other tabs. So that there's something
Oh, I think
with
I
your
know.
mic, I guess.
How about now? Any better? Hold on, I'll rejoin. How about now? No?
Maybe this is my side. Hello, hello.
How about now?
No, yeah, no, yes, no. It
No?
works.
Still no?
Yeah. Hello, hi, Paul.
Oh, okay, you hear me now? I
Yeah.
I think we found a bug in the Zoom app for iOS.
Okay,
So
okay.
did you say you? So I was before I joined the meeting, I was listening to a radio app, and I think the radio app kept the audio and brought it to Zoom.
Okay, okay.
You
Nice.
said you could hear some background noise or some YouTube or something.
No. I just checked the other tab if I can listen something, if this is
Oh,
speaker on my side or not.
oh, okay, okay. Oh, right. Yeah. So you tested with something and it was good. Yeah, but I bet that was it. I was in I I I bet my something with my audio got tied up in the other app I was using.
Yeah,
I
I
just
guess.
restarted my phone.
Okay, okay. So how are you doing?
Good, good. Morning here. So I dropped the kids off at the school and I'm giving my dog a quick walk before I get back to work.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
How's the weather?
Nice. Yeah. We yeah, it's like kind of perfect right now. Like I don't know what's room temperature in Celsius. It's like probably 73 degrees right now. Not
Okay.
humid. It'll be in the we're still in warm season where I'm at, so it's it's starting to cool off a little bit. It's like it'll be like 90 degrees today or something like that, which is kind of cool for us this time of year. Last
Okay.
over the weekend it was like 104, which I think is like getting around 40 C or something like that.
So when your kids get back to school, like is it what's the vacation time?
Yeah, so they started last week.
Ah, okay. So
Yeah.
my starting Monday. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, mine my school starts a little early. They're giving them the US Thanksgiving holiday. This year they're giving them the whole week off. So that's
okay.
part of why that we started earlier. So it was normally traditionally that's like people get Thursday and Friday off from school and work holidays. But
So it is
this year this
interesting. They kind of adjust as they want. Like it is
yeah,
interesting. But in Poland, it's like there is like a ruling, and that's it. Every school have to do the same date, start the same date, finish. There is no discussion.
right. Yeah, it's funny. When I was young, I kind of maybe I just didn't know, but I always felt that's how it was. And I was in a smaller town, so
Okay.
we had not too many schools, but yeah, every school was same day, in and out. But yeah, now we have like my my brother-in-law, my kids' cousins live nearby us, and
Mm-hmm.
they go to a different elementary school, and they're starting like 2 weeks later than we are. Um, so it's yeah, it's a pretty big difference in the start dates.
Yeah. I guess in
But
Germany also they start differently, like because we have some family in Germany. They saying like, oh, we start in 2 weeks or we start in a week. So yeah, I guess that. But everyone's starting and there is end of vacation. Like
yep,
for me finally, but for some people maybe some small regret that it's end of summer and
yeah,
so on.
yeah, a little bit of both, but it's nice to have the house quiet again during the day.
Yeah, yeah, that's the point. That's the point.
It's like they went back, and all of a sudden I was like, I thought the day was longer. It's like it was all of a sudden it's time for them to come home. I was like, wait, wait, wait. That
Yeah,
seemed
that's
too
true. I
fast.
have the same. I have
It's
precisely
like,
the same. Like
yeah,
it, they don't want to go to sleep in normal hours because vacation time.
yeah. I forget how old are yours?
I have five, so it
Oh
depends.
wow. Yeah.
The older one is finishing 11 in November.
Oh, okay.
The younger is 2 years old.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So
And yours?
mine two, they're uh 8 and 10.
8 and 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so
One is
like
turning
my
10 like next week. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so they're like second grade and fourth grade.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I've been busy lately. I guess this is I forget we're recording, right? I think the recording started as soon as someone joins. But
if you
OCP,
have control over Zoom, you can probably I don't know if you have admin rights here or not.
I don't know that I do.
Okay. because you
Let me
can
see.
stop it or pause it if you have. You should see buttons if you have. If you don't have, then you don't have. That's it.
Yeah, I
Someone will
see
listen
there.
our chit chat.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's just boring people. I was going to mention that my other topic I was about to shift to is OCP friendly. Anyway, just around AMD's open source efforts. I've
Mhm.
been. I think, as I've shared to you, like a big challenge at AMD is, um, getting review of internal code and getting alignment from engineering and management internally that code is appropriate to be made public.
Yeah. So you're saying about Phoenix, yeah?
Yeah. So it's a huge effort to to go. Yeah. So Phoenix is a whole separate topic, and so that issue of difficulty with alignment is made even more challenging by cross business unit
Mhm.
viewpoints. So in so speaking to, I guess, the server for now, yeah, uh, where my main focus is, I'm starting to focus on Venice. Obviously, I've been focusing on Venice from engineering work and getting that we're up and running there. But from the standpoint of Venice launch, we'll be here before we know it, and I've got a lot of commitments to open source code, the Venice code. So I'm starting now to get that readiness and alignment in place. So it's been kind of fun. I've recently started with the way our LLMs are advancing and the AI tools we have available. I'm kind of working on a tool to help me analyze and prepare code to
Okay.
to be public.
Does it accelerate your work,
I think so.
or
I mean,
makes more problem?
yeah. So far, no. So far, no.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's getting to a point where I think it will accelerate the work. So I'm still optimistic. There's the fear that I keep working on it and then I end up hitting some maximum, right, where it's like, okay, it's not getting better than this, right, no matter what I
Mhm.
do. But I I think when I get to or near that point of the best I can make it work, I think it's going to be pretty helpful.
Okay, do you have any kind of some experience you can share based on like models which are efficient for certain tasks, or you just have something internally completely trained for yourself, or how this
Yeah, so
works?
I'm using internal ports of public models and in some cases, purely public models.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't done anything in terms of training my own model yet,
Okay.
and I'm not sure that I will. But what I have done is uh, I'm like running analysis on uh, like already public code sources, like for root and EDK2 and everything in the open source organization, and
Mm-hmm.
using multiple levels of uh, comparison uh, and analysis between currently private code and those public code sources. And based on the results of those compares, determining like derivability of
And
of the private code.
what public model you using? Can you say what kind of
GPT-5, yeah, mostly right now.
GPT-5? Okay.
Yeah, predominantly that. And I've switched down around to a few other models, but right now GPT-5 seems to be my favorite.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah,
I don't know if
yeah,
you
and
feel the same, because I have feeling like with this LLMs evolution, like kind of like a kind of high end workstation and server market for homes kind of get some traction, because people wants to have they want to pay for expensive setups, like
uh-huh.
even I don't know if you saw this A16Z, it was like 40 or 50K workstation, uh,
Oh wow,
by the way, based on AMD. So
nice.
um,
Yeah,
you know, like 50K for
Yeah,
workstation. So,
yeah.
but you know, like people were saying that this market is in decline, and like suddenly we have LLMs and people wants to have private computing, at least for some use cases, and that's gets some traction. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw this gigabyte we're doing, but this is Turing, yeah. So I guess this is to some extent for you. Uh, so you're saying you're working on Venice, and how this will? So is there any public roadmap for Venice OpenSea? How this will work?
Yeah. So our goals there, which we've we're very open about. Um, we're working on so the I guess the roadmap that we painted like a long time ago with respect to different silicon projects in general is that
Mm-hmm.
we want to have our code open sourced within 1/4 of the product launch, trailing like within 1/4 after product launch. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we really want to bring that in, as you saw on Genoa and Turin. Like we coined the 1/4 time frame around Genoa time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we came up with that time frame, Genoa had already launched by more than a quarter. So obviously we missed it for Genoa. In Turin, uh, we got a little closer. I think the first code that I open sourced for Turin was maybe a little bit after 1/4, maybe a quarter and a quarter, maybe
Mm-hmm.
like
And
maybe
Venice is planned for what time? Like, is it any public?
mid late 2026, mid to like Q2 Q3 2026.
Okay,
So
so
I'll
then
be here
OpenSea will
before you know it.
be Q3 Q4. Okay.
Yeah, and hopefully soon. So we're aiming to shorten that 1/4 delay as much as possible. So ideally, I'd like to get code published, oh, within weeks of launch, not months.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go forward, it would be great to have, day zero, day one, launch. Like, Lisa announces the product, and the next day I push the code. Is where we want to be. Yeah. So
But then, but for social members, is it available like earlier, or how you're saying about the public release, not about?
yeah, that's for the public release. Yeah. So for under NDA release, we're enabling people now, for customer projects. So that's available in ways that you've engaged with us in the past, through
Mm-hmm.
like a GISA style licensing, basically under licensing NDA. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So if you guys have interest in Venice, we can talk about that offline.
Yeah, right now we will have to push this Turin part, and that's like our top
Yeah,
priority. But right after that, we will probably switch, like I guess like Q1, maybe end of Q1, unless we will be easy with something else because of like I hope some marketing of that will kind of um, give us some projects. And if that will be the thing, then we will see if we will go with another project or we will try to serve customers that way. We will
yeah.
see in
That's
what direction business will go.
sure. Yeah, and it's great to see that effort on Turin. I was excited to see it, and I'm happy to provide. Like I can only dedicate so much bandwidth or support towards it. We've been clear on AMD's official stance with core boot support right now, and so it's not there, but we encourage the work and experimentation from the community. That being said, there's still more code from the GISA layer for the Turin POC that
Hmm.
needs to be open sourced. And so I'm still working on that. A lot of the work I'm doing to prepare Venice, I'm testing with the Turin code that has not been released yet. So getting closer to being able to publish the rest of that kind of a GISA layer, and we've called it like a AGCL, a GISA compatibility layer or whatever. Basically, it's just a reduced piece of Igisa, the stuff that didn't get implemented in OpenCell yet. So that will, I think, greatly help your corporate effort on Turing. Also.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Like, I have project for Phoenix. Yeah, but I know that you don't probably have dates right now, and but really, like, I have projects waiting for Phoenix, and to be honest, I had this decision. Either I'm doing Phoenix OpenSeal myself, like ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Uh, that would be crazy. But I don't know. I don't know what's your side, what's AMD would say about that.
Right.
This is maybe,
You need to just like port it from Turin, basically, like take learnings from
yeah,
Turin.
yeah, 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 yeah. This is what we did for this Epic 3000.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah, we will do.
in
But on the other side, it would be duplicate effort, and everything here is about not duplicating the effort.
right.
Uh, but yeah,
We
but I
see.
just
Let's set up a call with Martin Roth sometime and dive on that topic. uh,
okay.
yeah, because there's some I have some thoughts there. Um, but yeah, it's getting farther and farther from being related to the OCP OPF project calls.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah. Um, but yeah, from on the engineering side, like me and Martin are, we're we could be happier with where we're at with the client OpenCell POCs release.
okay,
uh,
okay.
yeah,
Understood, understood.
it's
Uh,
challenging.
yeah, so right now I shifted that to Q1. Yeah. Hopefully,
Yeah,
like, I have some hopes that you will do it Q4 maybe, and then Q1 I could deliver something. If not, then yeah, then maybe I will have to shift one more time. But then so because after that you have another. So after Phoenix there will be another, yeah, generation at some point.
yeah, yeah.
When it will be released, you remember the?
I forget. I'm not as tied into the client roadmap. Uh,
Understood.
yeah, if I give a date, it would probably be a hallucination.
Okay. So regarding OpenSFI, to just maybe switch that to on topic.
Yeah,
Um, um, so what's the plan here? Like, what's the plan to have something based
yeah.
on those
So
specs?
I forgot. Did you?
Yeah, I have access. I get it from Raj. I started to
Yeah,
read the
okay, so you've
spec.
got the spec access? Yeah. So yeah, that's, we're marching towards like an initial release at a .3 level.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen it. Right now we're going through like the late hopefully late stages, very late stages of internal AMD approval since it's obviously it's an OCP project, but since it's largely derived from AMD, we
Mm-hmm.
we're just making sure that we're aligned with AMD legal and product marketing, all the uh, approval layers internally, just to make sure that we don't have any hiccups
But
there.
it looks like quite a lot of entities commit. So Intel also commit to this. So does it
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. So we just need a lot of that. We just need to uh, I think a lot of that is just kind of like making um, uh, our legal departments aware, that yes, we're working as contributors, but this isn't an AMD released spec, right? It's an OCP
Mm-hmm.
release that we're working on. So, um, yeah, I think a lot of the normal, legal proceedings and stuff that we go through are not relevant here, but um, where we're at.
But when you will have this spec, like, let's say, so you're saying, like, if you will reach like 0.9 or something, you will have some code integration, or like, I'm just wondering how it will translate to the ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we can get better discussion on that when but we do want to move rapidly. So like the .3 spec release, we're targeting global summit
Mhm.
timeframe. and then, that we're outlining, a kind of fast track to getting code proof of concepts implemented and things like that. So, yeah, we don't want to wait like a year for .5 and then 2 years for, POC code or anything like that. Oh, it, um, I think the timeline was discussed a bit in the last one of these meets.
Okay.
I
Okay.
forget it off the top of my head, but we can look at that today, I think.
Okay. Where I can find any kind of past meeting notes or something?
Um, I'm driving right now, so let me.
Sure. Okay. Okay. I will not distract you.
No, it's okay. Um, yeah, I think they're posted up. I'll see if I can find them. I'll be at my computer in about 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay.
So are you? What is it? 5 p.m. there? 6 p.m. or 1800 or?
6 p.m. Yeah, it's 6 p.m. But yeah, I was like Raj wrote me it's 8 a.m.
Yeah,
PT, and yeah, I was like so confused. The calendar was saying something differently, and I was like, okay, either I something's messed up with the time zones, or um, yeah, I tried a couple of times to do the conversion, but
yeah,
8 a.m. is 5 p.m. Central Europe summertime.
yeah,
But nobody is here. Maybe this is incorrect link or something, and I started to wonder what's going on.
yeah, yeah. We were having this at 10 a.m. Pacific, and just about 2 or 3 meetings ago, it moved to 9 a.m. Pacific. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, for some reason, I've always had trouble hitting this meeting. I for a long time I wasn't. The calendar item wasn't integrating properly with my Outlook calendar that we.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always seeing the reminders like 25 minutes after the meeting started or whatever.
Yeah, I guess if everyone will integrate on top of this uh, spec, then I guess like it's good to for 3M Dev to invest some time and look into this.
Yeah. I'll be right back. Let me see if I break my Zoom instance of myself. I'm going to join from my computer now.
Sure.
Hey, Tim.
Howdy.
Hey, Mike. If anybody wants to get bored with 30 minutes of Peter and I chatting, you can listen to the recording after the meeting.
Morning, everybody.
Hey, good morning. Good morning,
Hey,
Raj.
Raj.
Good
guys.
morning.
Raj?
Yellow. Let's see. Who do we have? Srini, Yotsu, Bert, Jose, Mike, Tim, Paul. All right. I think we have a quorum. We still don't have Sammy yet.
Got new one.
Hey, Felix, thanks for joining.
Hello.
And this is Felix Polyadov, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because there was, I think I remember there was some other Felix that joined last time around. So we still don't have Sammy yet. I believe he's still traveling. It's kind of hard to get a hold of him. But I did, he did reach out to me when we were submitting the presentations, especially the OPF update presentation that Jean-Marie Dong, myself, and Sami are going to be presenting right at the beginning of the OPF track presentation during the summit. So he's I think he's just prioritizing what is absolutely necessary. He responds to that, so that's okay. I do need him to upload the vision and mission statements up on the wiki for OPF, because that is important for it's important but not super urgent from a timeline perspective. We still have a few weeks until September 29th, which is when the presentations, the final presentation will be uploaded. So 29th is the last day for final presentation after we've addressed all the comments and feedback from the OPF chairs. And So there's much work ahead of us from now till the OCP summit. And I know lots of people are running 200 miles an hour, many of them in this meeting as well. So thanks everybody for your help in being part of the team in contributing to the presentation, in contributing to the specification, the 0.3 specifications. Now, one thing that is that I don't have a visibility on, Felix, is your 0.3 specification. So I'll need an update from you. How's that coming along and all this stuff? But just hold on that. And then we also have Bert and I are contributing OpenSIL specification that we need the OPF chairs to approve. I think, Bert, do you know if any one of us has approved it yet? At least I have, but how about the others? Like I'm waiting on Sammy and Jean-Marie. Dong has also approved, I think, but
Yeah,
I'm
Dong is the only one that I
Dong is the
saw.
only one. Okay, so
Right.
Sammy has approved it already? Sammy and Jean-Marie?
I haven't seen any other approvals
Okay,
for it
then
yet.
we are missing Sammy and Jean-Marie. So I'll reach out to them. Jean-Marie did tell me that he was in Europe and he would be approving it this last Monday, but it's very likely that he's spaced out when traveling. It is
No, do you know, will those all approvals need to be are they all required prior
Yeah.
to presentation?
Yes, that is correct. At least the specification. The presentation is hinged upon the OPF chair to approve it. If there is only one chair, you just have one approval. But if there are three chairs, like
Right.
in our case, then we need three approvals. So I have approved it. Jean-Marie and Sami has to approve it as well. And then once that gets approved, then the presentation is made in the steering committee, and then Dong will approve it as a representative of the OPF track. Right. And then everybody else will, I don't know who else will approve at a committee level, but that's the general process.
Okay.
So yeah, that, and then the same applies to 0.3 specification as well. At this time, I'm expecting the 0.3 specification to be frozen. Minor changes are okay. And by the way, thanks. I did see Mike join today. Is he still here? Yeah. Hey, Mike. Thank you so very much for all your comments from yesterday. So we'll do the best that we can to address all of them and incorporate those feedback into the specification. But at this time, I'm just taking any minor changes I can easily fit it in. I'll do that. But any major changes, like for example, one of your comments was to remove the runtime API, or we can't have an API without defining the input and output structures. So those were deliberate, and the fact that input and output structures are not defined yet was decided to be addressed post 0.3. And we will address it right after. We can address it starting now, but we are not going to make any changes to the specifications yet until the 0.3 has been uploaded, and we can start another documentation, and we can take it from there. But I think any simple modifications like moving, like the one that you were mentioning, about what was that about the val. The val. So I can move that out into an appendix, and we can keep it there until until we have maturity, until we have everybody lined up onto exactly what needs to be done from a POC perspective, which we start in January timeframe. So, which is why it is important that that portion lives somewhere. We could be looking at a separate document, but that separate document, SSIMG, that I mentioned, that I'm not expecting that to be started before 0.5 is ratified. So we'll keep that in the appendix for now, and then we will move it out to some other document.
Well, if you could clarify something for me. I mean, I think the way it's things that are like actually starting to form some like C-like calls, it's completely unimplementable at how it's defined now, and so I'd almost rather see that the concept of the APIs be described as opposed to like a real API, because it's not implementable.
It is not implementable.
The feedback I'm giving, like the fact that the stateless requirement, but we all know that there may be state that has to be maintained by the various silicon implementations. It's a fundamental gap, right, in the API definition. It's not implementable. So why would we go to the extent of actually publishing a spec that we know can't be implemented? Well, a spec content that can't be implemented.
The idea of publishing the 0.3 spec is to continue to make progress through these iterations, and I'm not expecting that anybody take the 0.3 spec and implement it, right? The implementation starts at 0.5, right? So between 0.3 and 0.5, we will make those refinements, and I'm expecting 0.5 to be done by end of this year, right? So we have about a quarter or so for us to get to 0.5. If hopefully that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that the describing the concept of the APIs without their details would make more sense then, right? Because we know it's going to have radical changes.
Yeah, at this time, I'm not even I'm not very well in line on your comment where you made that it is not even implementable, right? So I need to get my bearings aligned with you on that. And because we are so close to the summit, I don't want to make any changes to the 0.3 unless there is something fundamentally wrong with it. If there is philosophically something wrong with it, we can address that at 0.3, between 0.3 and 0.5.
Yeah, it doesn't meet the stateless requirement at all as it's defined.
Okay, so can you help explain why it doesn't meet the stateless requirement? Or that is
if the silicon code itself needs to have its own state between stages, there's no place to store it, right? Because the silicon code can't do any allocations.
What that means is OpenSFI does not maintain the state. That does not mean nobody else can maintain a state, right? The idea is that the host, whoever is the caller to OpenSFI, could maintain the state. We actually had a conversation on this last week. I don't know if we came to closure, but that's the general idea, right? OpenSFI itself is stateless.
Right, but the silicon code you call can't do memory allocations, right?
They cannot do memory allocations, but the memory allocations are made by the host firmware.
Yeah, exactly. So if the silicon code requires its own buffer to maintain its state, then the layer above has to allocate it. If the layer above allocates it, how would it pass that information in?
Through the input. So as soon as you send a pointer as an argument to these APIs, that would be your allocation, right? It would have been allocated before the pointer is passed to the API.
But there's another part of the spec that says that the input and output buffers are going to be common for all SOCs. They're going to be defined by the OpenSFI spec, so there can't be any vendor-specific content.
Okay, so Bert, can you help clarify that in the document somewhere? Can you work with Mike offline and
Sure.
And then add me to that conversation as well. We can take a look at it.
Sure.
Okay.
So maybe we
Now,
can.
the content of the input, that still has a lot of work, right? We still require a lot of work. I mean, we're not even at a stage where we can decide what those inputs are.
That is right.
Right.
That is right. And that is
Right.
what we were going to leave it open until 0.5. And that was something that we would be addressing between 0.3 and 0.5 for the rest of the year. So I think we have ample amount of time between 0.3 and 0.5 to get those type of things like the stage ID, common stage IDs, the input-output structures that are common, right? The layouts and all the stuff that we are planning to describe that at between 0.3 and 5. Now, we can start another document that lists out what we will be addressing. I think that would be a great idea, Mike, to start a document that what needs to be done at 0.5. And it's just sheer that we didn't have time to get to that point. We did discuss all of this, but it's just not documented in a single document.
Right, because I mean, there's another. I think it was just a recent edit that went in that said that no changes to the layer above, for different silicon vendors, right? And fundamentally, when you talk about the input configuration data and the output state information, I don't know how that's possible. How is that possible? To not have any changes to the layer above when there's potentially new configuration options, or different configuration options between different SoCs.
Bert or
Yeah,
anybody?
I think that we just need to discuss that, right? We can use abstraction to abstract data. The data structures that get sent into SFI are static. What's inside of those structures can be different, right? So we can have abstractions in there that allow us to provide vendor-specific data. And we actually had this discussion before about creating vendor-specific addendums, right? That may define the specific data that Intel would require versus the data that AMD would require, right?
Okay,
That
then some of the text that's in there that says no changes to the layer above are wrong then. Because if there's vendor-specific content, different SoC requires vendor-specific data. That then requires code changes in the layer
Yeah, I would
above.
have to look at that specific section. I don't recall seeing that. Maybe it's something that was added I haven't read yet.
Yeah, I think I see the point. I think it's good to clarify these things. Maybe I think based on our last week discussion, right? I see the concept, right? I think we from the host layer, those structures are kind of opaque, right? We have visibility, but we don't know what that is, right? So more like that.
But certainly I can understand
Yeah.
your point, right? I mean, Intel and AMD may never come to an alignment on every piece of data that needs to go into silicon initialization. Now, I don't think that that's something that we're trying to push for, right? So we have to have an
Same with
abstraction
ARM,
method, right? And with ARM as well, right? We cannot define, as a group here cannot dictate what silicon requires, right? So there has to be some flexibility, and I think, as Raj mentioned, between now and the end of the year, that's something that we have to define,
Right.
right? What abstractions can be there?
Yeah, and also, Bert, there is a likelihood that we could commonize it, right? But there is also a likelihood that we may not be able to.
Right,
So
and it could be commonized, but what I meant was that the people in this discussion and in this group may not have the leverage to force changes like that, right? It would require a wider discussion.
Right. So that we need to get to that common aligned understanding of where we are from a input and output structures, and whether we can or we cannot commonize it, right? So until somebody takes a look at both the lay of the land of both the SOCs, we will never know. And the best people to look at that would be the platform integrators that have an access to both, right? And can look at what can be commonized, right? So I am looking at the firmware vendors. I'm looking at the platform integrators to guide us in that direction, right? And so, but until they look at it, from this angle, we will never be able to make that decision. But yeah,
Right.
The idea is there that you know there is this wishful thinking that, geez, I mean, it's these are common components, right? So maybe there is a lot of commonality, right? So that we can
Right,
drive.
but I think what it means in practice is there's always going to be porting work, even if you get to a common set of stages. So okay, I call these APIs in
Right.
this sequence.
Mhm.
But if there's always data on the way in and data on the way out that's vendor specific, there is always porting effort. And I just want to make sure you don't set up a false expectation that there's no porting effort for different
Porting
SOCs.
effort.
So I think in practice it's going to be in this idea that we may eventually be able to get to a common set. And as somebody else said, I don't think there's, in practice it's going to happen in a very reasonable period of time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
here's the thing. I mean, what we don't know yet, right? So that's what this pathfinding mission is all about, right? That's why we are going through 0.3 to 5 to 8, all the way to 1.0, right? It will help us, point our bearings finally in the right direction, right? Right now, we don't know what we don't know, but we know that that there is a possibility, right? So we are embarking on that journey. And as far as the porting is concerned, Mike, do you mean to say porting work on the platform integrators part?
Yes, yeah, the host side, the host caller. If there's vendor specific structure elements on the way in, on this input or output, every time there's a new SOC or a new SOC generation, there's porting work that has to be done. And
Right.
the spec right now, in at least one place, is trying to set the expectation that porting work
Yeah.
is not required.
I
if they follow
agree
this
with
standard.
that. I think that kind of language we should avoid, right? It doesn't, I mean, even not even considering different vendors for the same vendor, generation to generation, there's going to be porting involved in that input data, right? The structure might not change, but at the very least, the data is going to change, right? So to imply that, we would set some data and it would be consistent not only across generations for a vendor, but across vendors, that would probably not be the tone that we want to, or the message that we want to send in the spec.
Like, can you tell me exactly what you mean by that? I mean, what part of that specific?
Well, we're talking about defining the data structures that are input into the different APIs, right, or the different stages. The content, we as a group can define the structure of that data. We cannot, as a group, commonize and define the value, the actual data itself, right? Different structures may contain different values for not only for Intel and AMD and ARM, but for generations within Intel, right? Different generations will have different configurations, right? We have to be able to support that abstraction. The structure itself should be static, right? Between all vendors. What we put into the structure is going to change. That's the porting effort, right? It's going to require porting. I don't know that there is a way around that.
I'd like to get what's in your mind, Srini? I mean, I know we discussed this, Srini and Felix, and so we did discuss this, and I think is Ian, you are here, is Giri here as well? No, he's not. So anyways,
I don't know. Here's maybe a bad example. A really bad example at a high level link training. Okay, we want to perform link training. That's going to be different, maybe even from platform to platform for an SoC, right? Depending on the topology on the system, the link training is going to be different. Memory initialization is another another area where we might have differences, right? I mean, right off the top, I can see that that is going to be a major difference between Intel and AMD is the memory initialization, right? Those are architected completely differently between the two vendors. So those are differences that are going to have to be able to be supported through abstraction, right? It doesn't mean we have to change the structure. It means that we have to be able to support data within that structure being different for different vendors.
So Bert, so memory training and memory and JEDEC initialization, that so if it is different or if it is non-existent in one SoC, that is stage dependent initialization, right? So
Right.
and then there's a sequence of stages that is provided by every SOC vendor as well, right? For every SOC ID, right? For every SOC ID, there is a sequence of stages, a table of stages, right? Enumerated. And so based on that, the host firmware will simply call the initialization based on those stages in that sequence, right? Now, between Intel and AMD, where one stage may not be even applicable, that stage does not even appear in that sequence of stages. So and hence the input output does not even matter for those type of things, right? So
I think the API you're referring to, Raj, has already been removed from the spec. That sequence of stages API was removed.
No. It's not the sequence of stages API. This was it was an enumerated list of sequence. Like, the list is of type enum of that sequence. I've mentioned that in, maybe the appendix or somewhere. I have made mention of that. So that is a design time contract between the host firmware and the SOC vendor, and the host firmware simply plays that sequence of initialization. That's it. It does not need to know what stages are supported.
So where does that information come from if it's not from an API?
Oh, that information comes from the SOC vendor. So the SOC vendor will have a .h file, right?
So that's another porting effort on the host side that they have to, for the SOC that they want to initialize, they have to get that information from the SOC vendor and then call that sequence, right? In that order.
But it is a common porting effort. And once that porting effort is done, when are we going to do that again? Right? It is going to be identical for all the SOC vendors and for the future, right? Future SoCs. So so for example, SOC 1 will have a certain sequence. The header file will contain that information. SOC 2 will have yet another sequence that will be in that header file.
So now you're saying that the contract between the host and the OpenSFI implementation is not just the APIs, it's this other .h file that's not talked about yet.
No. It is talked about in the specification. I hope I did put it in there. There are mentions of certain .h files. If not, then I'll put it there. But I'll take a look at the specification and point that to you, Michael. If it is not,
but that's not a generic API then, right? Because
no, it's not an API. It's not an API. It's a .h file that has sequence.
Right. Well, let me back up. I'm saying this spec, the OpenSFI spec, is supposed to be a interface spec, right? Common interface. Right. So the document, as far as defining the contract, that's testable between the host code and the silicon code. Everything about that contract has to be part of the formal part of the specification that's testable.
Right.
Hiding things in a .h file that's delivered with the code is not part of a formal testable contract.
And why not?
Because it has to be the .h file would have to be whatever's part of that .h file would have to be part of the specification.
And
formal part
I
of the
think it should
specification.
be, right? I mean, an API doesn't just include functions. It includes all data, structures, everything, right? Anything that's at an interface.
Right. I agree.
And it wouldn't be SOC specific as part of the public interface, right? The public interface is supposed to be the thing that is invariant across all the implementations. If there's anything that varies, it has to be discoverable through an API.
Unless it is a contract between the host firmware and the OpenSFI, right?
But
It's
it would be in the
design by-
spec. It would be that exact part of the contract would be in the spec
Yeah, it should be in the spec.
and would not vary from one SoC to another or one SoC generation to another.
That is correct. The contract should not vary. The content of that, like for example, the sequence, that can vary. So anytime any new SoC that a SOC vendor comes up with, they will release that that to the platform integrators. They integrate that, and then that's it. It's
So that means effectively there's a different OpenSFI specification for every SoC then.
I'm not sure if I'd put it that way, Mike. I don't know. Maybe
No,
my-
I don't think a different, not for every SoC, but there should be addendums, right, that will specify vendor specific information. There's not really a way to, I don't think, to avoid having vendor specific information. It's just making sure that the interface is not dependent on that vendor specific information, right?
Yeah. I would
defining-
agree. It's very hard to define a public interface that does this level of abstraction. Requires a lot of effort, right? And I think trying to push it off and say, oh, there'll be a magic.h file that's delivered with the SoC for the things that are hard. That's we're not doing a good job as far as trying to define a public interface or a standard interface between the host and the silicon specific content.
I think it's a good. I truly wish this list of enumeration,
right.
is static, but I do think it's gonna change as we so putting that in the spec would create maintenance problem with the spec itself, right? I mean, say you have 10 enumeration now, and then after whatever time, right? And then some of us come and say, oh, I need to add a couple more in between or wherever, right? So yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should need to think about that part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think I'll go back to what what you were saying, Raj. I think maybe maybe we should just keep working and then we will figure out what it is, right? Some of the things would come out as people really start implementing, right? And then you will see some practical
Right.
limitation, and then we'll come back and work on the spec. So probably after 0.5.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's that is like I said, we'll with time
Yeah.
we will calibrate to these type of nuances where we might have to make some things variable, and I think we'll settle at some point in time and align as to what the reality is and what really needs to be done versus what were the original elements. I mean, these kind of things. I mean, that's the point about having different revisions, is to revise it through the through time to different different parts of the spec. So
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any opinion on this one? I'm looking at the platform integrators. Ian, the firmware vendors, Tim, Srini.
Yeah, I'm going through the spec today and then working with people internally here to get it approved. But my understanding from the in-person meeting we had was that the struct passed in, there would be a large common section, and there would likely be some uncommon section that's per platform, per SoC.
Right, and
So
that uncommon section doesn't necessarily have to be a difference in the structure, right? It's just an abstraction. For example,
Correct.
a pointer to another data set or something, right? That is abstracted.
Correct. And from this discussion, that would likely live, or that what that pointer points to, that additional struct likely lives in the SoC specific header file,
Right.
things like that.
Right, the vendor specific code, right?
Yep. But I mean,
Yeah.
this discussion is tracking with what my kind of worldview of where we're going is.
Right. So also, you know, I'm going to bring that, you know, that part of the discussion back that we kind of sort of bottomed out on, and this has to do, Felix, with you. If you remember, originally we were we had the idea that, hey, we would use interpretable binary for these input and output structures, and then we settled to, oh, no, let's keep it at binary, pure binary. And that would be a contract. These header files would be a contract between the host firmware and the OpenSFI. It's to make it maybe easier, at least in my mind. Could we get that part of the discussion back? That you know, where it would make it easier for the host firmware to pass information, input and output information using interpretable binary. I don't know. I'm just, you know, throwing that out there, and to see if that part of the discussion will need to be brought up back. So the encoding will happen at the host level, and decoding will happen at the OpenSFI level at both, you know, both the SOC vendors, and we will construct our information based on that, and then invoke the necessary silicon initialization APIs underneath, under the hood. I don't know. Just a thought, by the way. So I'm still looking. I'm looking at Felix, you and Srini, you, because you guys were the biggest proponents of those interpretable binaries.
Yeah, so I think it's like two sides of this spectrum. On one side, we are saying the input parameters avoid pointers, and the definition is vendor specific. So that's when one side of the spectrum where it's not very interoperable. So essentially, there is a big portion effort for the platform integrator. And then what you're saying is the fully dynamic implementation, when you don't even need a header, you can dynamically discover the entire interface. I think this is also not practical because it will require a lot of overhead, which is not practical for the firmware. So what we are talking about in between, I guess, as Jan said, that there always be a portion of the input output that is standardized, and maybe some vendor specific section, and hopefully it will be evolving process where that standardized section will grow over time. So for us, there are two areas of focus. So essentially, what is our goal? Our goal is to decrease the portion of firmware that has to change from platform to platform. So, for example, if data is part of the board configurations, like number of DIMM sockets, number of PCI Express sockets, number of CPU sockets, so those are higher priority on our list if we can standardize those. And also the output, if the output is needed to build some standard like ACPI tables or some bias tables, then this is also like higher on our list. We would like to see those standardized. And maybe that's also easier because anyway, any vendor has to have this information available or has to take this piece of working data discoverable at runtime interface is not practical for firmware, then the interface has to be defined in the spec. So, and at that point, defining the interface and representing interface's memory is like a two separate questions. And the final point, as far as the list of stages that also was discussed, yeah, I think I kind of agree with Mike. For us, it's having that standardized is very helpful. So I thought, like originally, we had that API to explicitly list support stages. Then we decided to get rid of it. So I thought at that point we were talking about that all the vendors will have to support all the stages, but of course they can just have a dummy implementation. And that's one way to kind of solve that problem.
Yeah.
Because also,
Yeah, either done or unsupported stage, right?
yeah, but what I'm saying, like for example, the memory initialization. Typically, on a platform that does the actual memory initialization, it would return like a memory map as an output parameter. Now, on some other platform, maybe this stage doesn't apply because memory is already available. But host firmware will depend on those output data structures. So, like even on AMD platform where memory is already available, AMD Open SFI implementation would still have to support that stage. It will do no hardware, configuration, but it still has to return the same output data that the host implementation would depend on.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree, Felix, that the stage defines what the host can depend upon, what information is available. Then it doesn't mean that the work to do that initialization was done when they called the API, right? It could have been done before. And I think we all know in practice that, the named stages, talking about mem and IO init, in order to do memory init, you may have to do some portions of IO init in order to do mem init, and then complete the IO init and as a full set later, right? So it's really about the contract between the host firmware and the silicon code. And as you said, Felix, it's about what are the prerequisites to call, and then what is the expected output, so that the host can then consume that output data to finish the sequence of init stages and have all the data they need to put the entire platform into an OS compatible boot state.
Right. So, but Mike, isn't that what we all aligned with already?
Yeah, but it's really about the output, as Felix says. It's not saying that just because it's called meminit doesn't mean that that's when meminit is done. Right.
Of course. So we can come up with a different name for the stage. It does not have to be meminit. It simply could mean that, hey, get me the memory structure, right? The structure of the memory. And to get to the structure of memory, one SOC vendor will have to perform the initialization, perform the JDEC initialization, gather all the information, path it back.
Right.
For some other SOC vendor, that's already done. So it will simply go ahead and provide that information, gather the information, provide that information through the output structure.
Right. And I think maybe the perspective on that, as far as how you name the stages, are you going to name them based upon what happens in the internal implementation for the SOC vendor, or are you going to name it based upon what the host that's calling, host that's calling the interface, and what they need from each stage in order to complete the sequence? So it depends on whose perspective you're naming them from.
Yeah, I think naming it from a host perspective makes much more sense at this time. But there could be situations where where this generalized thought may not even apply, or from a host vendor perspective, from a host firmware perspective, and we'll simply have to live and learn through these different versions of these specifications.
Yeah, I think this was a topic that was raised before a long while back, right, about these stages and making them generalized. If we if we create the stages from the host firmware perspective, right, that is really the only way I think that we can successfully make it abstracting the silicon initialization from the host, right?
Right.
If we start getting very granular on host specific needs for different, or sorry, not host, silicon specific needs for stages, then we run into this issue of having to continually introduce new stages, right? If they become more generic, then silicon may initialize several components within a specific stage. It does not have to be a initialized memory, initialized PCI Express, right? Initialized cores. It can be general stages where several tasks are performed by the silicon code.
Right. Several or just one task, depending
Right.
on SOC vendor. So, or even the SOC within that vendor. So, so I think at least we are aligned on that one. But the thing in my mind, Mike, is that what are the absolute necessary changes that we need to make to 0.3, knowing that there is work ahead of us, there is much more learning ahead of us. My question to you is that at least my plan was to freeze the 0.3 spec as is, and I've already started the workflow process for OCP approval, et cetera, which is why I sent these numerous emails. Hey, can you guys please now that it is at 0.3, can you please put log your vote in for an acceptance. But at the same time, knowing what we know, and we will try to get an accurate list of what needs to be done post 0.3, between 0.3 and 0.5. We can come up with that document, and possibly at the last minute we can attach it to the 0.3 addendum, one of the 0.3 addendums. And would that satisfy your quest to make it a solid 0.3, knowing that there are changes coming post 0.3?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the timeline here is, Raj. I think I've got about 4 buckets of feedback that I've put in, around the removing the val concept from the main body of the spec.
Yeah, that
I still see that, and
I
the
can-
SOC ID parameter, and I put a last comment in there as well, that you're talking about policy decisions, and I think those should be in the layer above. You should not, contaminate the API with the SOC ID parameter and that removal of the runtime APIs, and just say we've got one for init stages, and we'll figure out what the contract is for the prerequisites and the outputs, and when the host firmware needs to call the different stages.
Right. So the first bucket is around the val, right? So I can
Yep.
move val. I could let me move the val into the appendix, right? I'll take
Yep.
that action item. The second one was the SOC ID. The SOC ID, I believe we need the SOC ID for the host firmware to present its intent, right? That this is the SOC ID that the current session is being enumerated for, and it for that particular platform, for that particular silicon, it will remain that for the rest of its life, right? For that platform. Now it is the OpenSFI that will then look at the SOC ID. It will OpenSFI, meaning the code underneath it. It will perform a read of the hardware, and if there is a mismatch, it will report back to the host firmware that, hey, I cannot support, or simply does the job. And that way the host firmware can take appropriate actions, graceful actions to inform for diagnostics purposes or whatever have you, right? That, hey, this.
Yeah, but I'm simply asking to move that up into the host firmware, that if the output from even the first init stage is here's the sock ID that's present, and then the host firmware can then do that comparison of here's the one I expect, here's the one that the code returned. If they don't match, then the policy decision about what to do is done there.
Okay. So what you're saying is that the host firmware will assume that it is a certain sock ID and not issue that as an argument to the OpenSFI. And if OpenSFI that will make that check, if it or it will make the check and return the sock ID back in the output structure, and it will be the host firmware that will determine whether or not it is the same or a different one.
Right. Compatible or whatever, or compatible, right? You can imagine even like steppings and things like that. It's like, oh, that one's good enough, right? It may be more than one they support. So that idea of a singleton versus a a family of ones that they could support if they're all compatible, that's a policy decision that the host can make.
Yeah, but why do you want that decision to be made by the host firmware and not inside the SOC vendor space?
Because it's a platform policy decision. It's not. It should be out. Our SOC code should be policy independent.
Yeah, but then you are putting the burden on the host firmware, which does go against the initial thought process that, hey, we'll minimize any SOC specific
They'd need to pass in a SOC ID. They have SOC specific information to pass it in as a parameter. I'm just saying do the check at the layer above.
Yeah, that is the minimal, but performing more. See, the way I think about it is, Mike, that the SOC ID is presented during build time, right? So the host firmware consumes it and passes that, versus host firmware retrieves the SOC ID from the OpenSFI and performs some computation on it, right? That is a little bit more philosophically, a little bit more than the minimal. So I think from
I don't understand why it would be more work than what it's because if they have the SOC ID value in the host to pass in as a parameter, they can do the comparison of the SOC ID out of the output structure.
No, it's not. So it is a blind comparison, right? It is a blind comparison. It's not an intelligent comparison when it performs that, right? And besides, the thought process, Mike, is that if we set that precedence, right, then more gets in there, right? Slightly more.
Right, but it really is in alignment with everything else. We say memory config is going to be part of the output structure. The I/O config is part of the output structure. The number of cores or whatever is the CPU, is part of the output structure. The ID for kind of the identifier for which SOC is present is part of the output structure, right?
Yeah, and that is common.
All APIs to discover everything.
Yeah, and that is common. That is common part between the SOC vendors, right? Memory, I/O, PCI, CXL, etc., etc. All of those elements are common, and they are platform elements.
So let me ask this, maybe just as a general question. What if a vendor had a silicon initialization code that supported multiple SOCs?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So how would that? I mean, if we would. Well, I think this whole discussion is suggesting that we have to have an API to determine what the SOC is that's supported by the silicon code, right?
So a family of SOCs is a knowledge of the SOC vendor, right? And that should be philosophically, it should be handled by the SOC space, in the SOC space, not in the host space. So given a SOC ID, given a SOC ID, within the SOC space, I would resolve it within my, within my own space, whether this other SOC that I read is compatible with the SOC ID, with the expected SOC ID or not.
Raj, I think the reason why you will need it is, say, as earlier we talked about input structure, right? There will be a common values, the structure that will pass, and that will be silicon specific. If SOC or OpenSFI is going to support multiple SOCs, then your input structure also will vary. If we are going to say we don't have a common input structure, if there are vendor specific input is going to be there, then host firmware should know what the SOC ID is. Otherwise, the input it will not be correct.
Yeah, that is the idea. If the and if the specified SOC ID is not compatible with any of the SOC family members that the SOC space discovers, it will make a conscientious return back to the host firmware stating that, hey, this SOC, based on this SOC ID, none of my operatable SOC family of SOCs, none of them are operatable, and hence this is not expected. So it is unsupported SOC ID.
Yeah,
So
I
what
think
will
this
happen?
is
So
two different ways of looking at it, right? I think Srini, what you're mentioning, what you're considering is saying you want host firmware to get the SOC ID first, then build the data that we need to input into
The reason
OpenSFI.
being, in the earlier already sometime back, we agreed upon that input is going to have two types of data, right? One is common and one will
Right.
be SOC dependent. If that is if we are going to say there will be SOC dependent data, that means the host firmware should already know the exact SOC that it is running on to populate that SOC ID dependent data.
Right. And the other way is if the host creates the data and passes it to OpenSFI, then OpenSFI says no, that one doesn't work, and then
Then what
returns
happens
an
next
error.
step? What will be the next step?
Next step
Well,
is
I think I think that's a firmware issue, right? If you have a firmware
No, is
developer
it going to recover or hang? What will happen?
no, that policy is up to the platform integrator, how they choose to handle that situation, that error, right? If it's
Shouldn't but
so
here OpenSFI is not letting it recover, meaning we are just stopping. What we said is, hey, we are going to say unsupported. That's it, right? Then how do we recover back? Meaning, as we said, if any
hang.
SOC,
No,
yeah,
Srini, it's a hang. What can you do? It's a
no,
hang.
that's the reason why we are okay. Why we have to do that kind of hang? We can always say, hey, if that guy returns, either two options. If the guy is going to return the right SOC ID is running on, the host firmware can populate the right input structure and then call it back again, right?
Right.
Yeah, that option. Why we should not let it happen that way? Why we shouldn't define that way instead of hanging the platform?
the other way
Well,
that we were just
let me ask this in a different way. What happens if you ask the SOC for the SOC ID and the host firmware does not support that SOC ID and it does not know how to build the tables for that? That would be the same. I guess it's the same concept, just in the reverse direction, right? Either you build the data first and assume, and the host firmware assumes that the silicon code supports it. If it doesn't, you get an error. Otherwise,
No, but I'm saying, think about this way. We already the input we already agreed on, right? There's a common and a SOC dependent. Okay,
right.
that is one. Number two, we already agreed there could be a possibility that a single silicon code is going to support multiple SOC IDs. If there is one, how do we run it? Think about that scenario.
Then the SOC vendor will give a specific SOC ID that will mean to the SOC space that, hey, this SOC ID corresponds to SOC ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? It can support all these SOCs. And as long as it read from the hardware and matches SOC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the SOC A that was passed to it, it's fine. It will come back and say, provide the information back to the caller. to the host firmware. So, but
So-
yet, but what I'm trying to say is that the logic lives in the sock space, not in the host space. Why should we burden the host unnecessarily? Is the point.
So Raj, we are virtualizing the SOC ID definition now.
Sure. Yeah, why not? What's wrong with that? That is a SOC vendor business, right? Why should we burden the host firmware with those nitty-gritty details?
If I may interrupt, and this is a really important conversation. I know that we're getting towards the end of the meeting. I wanted to clarify one quick thing before we start losing people. I posted in the comment section here, the silicon supported stages that I think we've already come to an agreement, right, that we're going to remove this API.
Yes, that is
Okay.
gonna go away. Yeah, that's
Okay, I'll take that. I just wanted to confirm that before people start dropping off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thanks. I think you did remove it. Thank you so much, Bert. I appreciate it. So
real
so
quick on.
So I have a hard stop at 10. You guys can continue a discussion. I don't know, Bert, are you here? Do you have the time for?
No, I have a hard stop as well. In fact, I'm a minute late.
Okay. So here's what I'll do. Let me put another out of band meeting for this week. Tomorrow is Thursday. Oh, sorry, today is Thursday. Tomorrow is Friday. So let me put this one for tomorrow. Hopefully people.
Raj, tomorrow is recharge day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. I understand it's a recharge day, but this is it's not for. I mean, at AMD it is a recharge day. I understand, but if you guys can attend, I would really appreciate it. If not, I will send a meeting invite to everybody. But if not, then I'll schedule one for Monday.
And I'll try to put together.
Monday is Labor Day, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad weekend.
Oh, that reminds I have so much work before before the break. Okay, so what about Tuesday? Is that okay with everybody or?
Yep.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. All right. So let me then schedule one for Tuesday of next week. Okay. I'll make I'll make the amend to the OPF calendar. So for the folks who cannot subscribe to that calendar because the IT blocks it, you will have to re-download the ICS file and import it to your calendars. Okay.
Will it be the same meet link?
It'll be the same meet link. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and it would be the same time, 9 a.m. Tuesday. Okay, Pacific time. All right, guys. Thank you so very much for
everyone.
great discussion. Appreciate it. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello.